Thank you for listening to Comics for Fun and Profit. This is Drew with a special episode of my other podcast that I co-host regularly, and it's Weekly Comic Spotlight over at John Mayo's comic book page. And for those of you who haven't heard it, I wanted to give you a chance to listen to it. It's a standard review show of a Marvel, a DC, and an independent comic each week. So check this out, and if you like it, go over there and subscribe or check out those episodes. They're a lot of fun. So thanks again for listening. Here you go.
This is Weekly Comics Spotlight 521 for comics originally released on August 2nd, 2017. Now, starting us off in DC is Nightwing number 26. This is by Tim Seeley, and the artist is Javier Fernandez? Yes? No? Yes? That's what it said in the solicit, and that's what it says in the credits when I finally got there. It's a couple of pages in. This is kind of an interesting issue. Still behind on my reading, so I read the previous arc right before reading this. And that was dealing with Blockbuster and some stuff like that. And this is dealing with Spiral, which is the spy agency that Dick Grayson was part of in the Grayson series. So they're bringing in Huntress, they're bringing in a lot of Spiral characters here. And it's funny because I'm not against that. I loved the Grayson series. I thought it was awesome. And it worked. I was cautiously optimistic going into it. It's like, geez, him as a super spy, I don't know. But it worked well. It had some phenomenal art. It was a lot of fun story-wise. And so I'm not against them bringing that in. But Nightwing has a really lengthy history, both as Robin. I mean, you can't go much further back in terms of characters in the DC universe, other than, like, Superman and Batman. Okay, there's probably maybe 3 or 4 others, I don't know. Crimson Avenger, maybe. Anyways. So you can't go much older in terms of the characters. So there's a ton of other source material to draw from. And in fairness, they just did Blockbuster last arc and a few other things. But it kind of reminded me how much I really loved the art in the previous series over the art, like in this issue. I mean, the art here is fine. It's good. But I thought it was really awesome in Grayson. And particularly after having read the previous arc in addition to this title is good, but it's not great. And this issue kind of underscored for me that even though we've got a lot of the same toys to play with the Helena Bertinelli character, the other agents of Spiral and whatnot, plus the regular supporting cast here of Grayson, this title kind of lacks the excitement, style, and just pop or whatever that I felt the Grayson title had. And the more I was thinking about it, the more I kind of realized that they're spending a lot of time in Bloodhaven that this Nightwing just moved to, even though the pre-New 52 had been there for years. But we've built up a new supporting cast of, all of these kind of has-been villains or whatnot. And they're interesting, they're fine, but I haven't really warmed up to them, So they're spending too much time on characters I marginally care about. Not to the point of crowding Nightwing out of his own book, but he's certainly not featured on like all 20 pages or something like I feel he could and should be. So I'm liking this, but I guess that's the way to put it. I'm liking it, but, it's got some room for improvement. How is this working for you?
It really doesn't. I dropped it during the first arc. It thought it was a little bit boring. I did enjoy Grayson. I read most of Grayson. Mm-hmm. But it also got a little tired, and it wasn't engaging with me anymore. The Spiral thing, I think we've explored that enough. So to bring that back in and that final splash page, I kind of see where we're going to go for a while in here. So there's really no reason to re-explore that for me. It's not, the stories aren't told well enough to make me excited. I get annoyed with the obligatory shirtless Nightwing in every issue, or at least every issue that I jump back in. There's at least 1 or 2 of him shirtless. I don't get it.
Honestly, I hadn't noticed.
Yeah.
Not saying you're right or wrong. I just hadn't phased
it is, and I've commented to Tim Seeley about that before on Twitter, and I think it's a point of pride that he'll write a scene in a lot It's either, the fans demand it or something like that, something to that effect. I find it forced, and there's no reason for him to always be shortlisted. But that's a nitpick. Other than that, I found the story pretty boring. Art's fine. Nothing that elevates it, but nothing to detract as well. I just don't think I care enough about this interpretation of the character and the situations that he's in to need to read this. It's kind of boring.
I can understand that. For me, it's not so much boring, but there's something about Tim Seeley's take on the character and the way he's using the title that is kind of not a swing and a miss, but it's certainly not a home run either by a wide margin. The way he was in this issue, I think it was this issue, maybe it was the previous one, where he was not going for the job interview. I think it might have been the previous arc. They all kind of blurred together. Yeah, it was the previous arc. Yeah, where he wasn't going for the job interview and stuff. It's like, oh, he's never held a job and stuff. It's like, actually? Well, and I was going to say, actually, he has, but now that I think about it, that was probably the previous Grayson and Nightwing and stuff from before the New 52.
And nobody knows about that, right?
Either it did or it didn't happen, depending how you look at the DC lineup these days.
Yeah.
If you go to what's happened to this character over in Titans, he should kind of remember his previous time in Bloodhaven, and it should have now been maybe in continuity again. I don't know. But they're playing it as if he hasn't been, a long-time bartender and had a few other jobs here and there over the years. Now, granted, he didn't hang on to him for long. There was a period where, in the long-running Nightwing series that went, 100 and some odd issues or something, every 6 months, new city, new job, new status quo. That got old pretty quick. So it's not quite that bad, but I look at what they were doing in the previous series with this character. I look at what they're doing here, and while I liked what they did in Grayson better. And I like him better as Nightwing, which is the confusing part.
And they've moved him to Bloodhaven. They've moved him to Chicago. They keep moving as if geography is the problem, or that's going to be the geography is what's going to make it an exciting read. I don't think that's going to be the solution.
No,
you can tell a lot of great Nightwing stories in Gotham, and I don't think the geography has anything to do with it. This is one of those titles, and there is a growing list of titles at DC and Marvel that needs a creative shakeup. Let's try a little something different. There's nothing wrong with it. It's harmless, but it's not exciting to read, and it's not doing anything interesting. So let's give someone else a shot at this to try to breathe some life into who should be a tier 1 character.
I guess if I were running a group of titles as an editor or editor-in-chief or whatever, and of course we know there's zero risk of that, so don't worry about whatever I'm about to say. But if I were, I would be trying to strive for whatever the current run is on every title in my jurisdiction to be widely considered like one of the definitive runs, one of the high water marks for the character, the series, the property, whatever.
I would want to do the same thing. I think that seems fair. That should be the goal, correct?
Absolutely. Not everything's going to hit that. I mean, even if you only get one out of the half dozen or whatever titles you've got, that's still a win.
But do you see this?
I'm sure they're trying to do that.
Do you see this creator taking those swings at it, though? It seems like these are by-the-number stories, and they're not swinging for the fences to try to get those great, really impressive runs.
I would agree with that, and there was some stuff, particularly in the previous arc, that really turned me off in a number of respects, in so much as I thought the character of Nightwing was not as smart as I have known him to be in the duration of just him being Nightwing, which I've read almost all of. I may have missed a few appearances here and there. Certainly I can't say that with him as Robin, because, well, I'm not that old, and there's a ton of expensive comics in that run. But from when he went from Robin to Nightwing in New Teen Titans and such, he's shown a certain amount of just team leadership, outsmarting the villains, etc., that is kind of not always there these days. And it's gotten to the point where it feels like he is so casual with his relationships that he's almost simultaneously, to some degree, involved with Huntress, Batgirl, what was it, Defacer or whatever is
Yeah.
the current one. Starfire at one point, maybe not in this continuity, and it's like whenever they need a subplot or whatever, oh, let's give him a romantic interest or whatever. Okay, you can do that. But there comes a point where you've done it so often, it's like he's got a fear of commitment or something, which just, again, for this character doesn't make sense. I don't know, there's something about the way they're handling the character these days that does not feel iconic, does not feel archetypal for this character, that, again, has a really long history. And there's some different directions you can go with the guy. But Nightwing, to your point, easily could and should be an A-list character, arguably second only to Batman and Superman in many respects, because he's really one of the few that works equally well with both of those two. There's a lot more they could and should be doing with this character, and I'm disappointed that they're not. This was not a bad read. It was okay, but I think it needs to be better than okay. And if they're going to spend this much time on the supporting cast, they really need to have a game plan and need to be going somewhere with those characters. And once those characters stop showing up here, that support group of ex-villains or whatever, I don't think we're ever going to see them ever again. And if so, it's going to be oh, look what obscure character this writer pulled out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
Sort of a thing. And that's fine, because not all characters should get focused on all the time, but it makes me feel like they're expecting me to invest in supporting cast characters that aren't worth investing in. So I'm liking the series. I'm a little frustrated with it, because this is one of my favorite characters. And I want to see them doing better with it, and I think they've done better with it in the recent past. So, for me, I'm going to go with a B-. Again, it's not a bad story, it's not a bad issue, but it is a bit of a waste of material. This is one, like I said, that could be doing much better for them than I think it is, and I want to see that happen.
Yeah, for me, it's a C-. It is a below-average comic for me, and I gave it another shot, and I'm going to just chill out for a while and maybe pop back in later.
Well, that's all they can expect is... if it's not working for you, the fact that you check in on it later is probably more than they have any right to expect.
Yeah.
Shall we move on to our Marvel book?
Yeah.
This is Jessica Jones number 11. This has a parental advisory not for kids. I point that out just because it's in really big red letters on the cover. This, too, I was behind on my reading. Get used to me saying this. I'm behind on my reading. It's going to be a little while before I catch up. So I read the previous 2 issues prior to reading this, and... those 2 issues, very wordy. This is Brian Michael Bendis' comic, and he, of course, is a very proficient typer. Good writer, too. I like what he does, but there's a certain aspect where you're writing a comic book, you're not writing a prose novel. And the amount of words on a page, Bendis goes from the sparse, like not almost, sometimes no words on a page, and sometimes just, my God, shut the hell up and give the art some space. This issue was not as wordy as those 2, which was good. But man, this story is reading like Bendis really wanted to tell a Maria Hill story in her own title, but he was able to get Jessica Jones because, well, Netflix and all that stuff. So he's just using the Jessica Jones character and title to provide a vantage point on a Maria Hill story. And this issue, when you boil it down, is a conversation between Jessica and Maria as a framing sequence, and 2 flashbacks, one with Jessica talking to Maria's dad, and then an early adventure of Maria's. That's it. So, 3 scenes, 20 or so pages, I didn't bother to count, and it was decent for what was there, but it felt a little unfulfilling because at the end of the issue, the lead character had a conversation with the would-be lead character, essentially. You could argue which is the lead and which is the would-be. I expect more for a $3.99 cover price. I know that's unrealistic. I know it's also unrealistic given that Bendis is pretty much the definition of decompressed, and this is decompressed. So it's like complaining about something that I should know to expect going in. But the part that really floored me was the scene at the very end ends on a note, a panel, where it's like, I know exactly what they're gonna do at the beginning of the next issue. They're gonna remind us of this little tidbit of Jessica that perhaps because we were so busy watching her have coffee or ice cream or whatever mundane thing she was doing, we may have forgotten about because it's so long since she's actually done anything, I don't know, vaguely heroic. This is one that I'm liking the Maria Hill story. It's just, this is Jessica Jones' book. Focus on her. I don't know. Frustrating. How did it work for you?
Pretty much what you were saying. I think maybe I'm enjoying the Jessica Jones book a little more than you leading up to this. And I really like the stuff with Jessica Jones. I really liked the conversation in the diner. I liked her flashback with Maria's dad. I didn't understand why we did the let's tell a Maria Hill flashback story. I don't care about her. I don't like that character. And I don't want to read her. So I felt it got hijacked. And the Jessica Jones stuff I really liked. But the Maria Hill stuff I didn't like. It was jarring art change.
Mm-hmm. I think that was intentional.
And it was not a style that I liked and not a character I cared about. And just told in a way I didn't like the layouts. I didn't like anything about it. So I'd like to just rip those virtual pages right out of there and throw them away and continue on reading about Jessica Jones, who is fun. I like her. And it's been a good run, but this was not the best issue I've read. A lot of fun stuff with the conversation. I thought they did some inventive things with the conversation in the diner. But the flashback was interesting. But the Maria Hill adventures, no, it wasn't. It wasn't necessary, and I didn't want to read it.
This is the kind of story that I think would work better on TV than in a comic book. Because I think having two actresses, having that kind of a conversation, doing the cutaways to the other stuff, it's very cinematic. It would work well because you could have the dialogue, which on the page is okay if you've got somebody who can really deliver it and they've got the interplay and the chemistry or whatnot, could be a lot of fun. But at the end of an issue, when all that has happened in this issue is two people talked, and we revealed a tidbit of one character's backstory, and we told another flashback that ultimately doesn't matter with Jessica and the dad. It was fun, it was entertaining, but I don't know that we get anything out of those scenes that we don't essentially get the gist of through the scene of the framing sequence at the diner or wherever. So I'm liking this Jessica Jones title better than the Alias or whatever the original one was, because the art there didn't really work for me.
Yeah. Little murkier.
Yeah, but this next issue is going to almost invariably start with a reminder that Jessica's bulletproof. Which, if that is the case, kind of cheapens aspects of this issue, which I think is already flimsy, and that frustrates me.
And why doesn't Maria Hill know that?
She does, I just don't think she cares. I think Maria Hill certainly knows that. She can't not. They're playing her as a female Nick Fury with all the, use of the LMDs, all the S.H.I.E.L.D. knowledge and the super, super, super spy aspect. She knows. But it would preclude some dramatic moments in the story. And it was done for effect, not for sensibility. Likewise, when we get the flashback from Maria's adventure, and she's essentially getting court-martialed or whatever the thing was, and then she comes out into the hallway, presumably of the helicarrier or whatever, the S.H.I.E.L.D. Tribunal Hall, and the family is there, and she's like, well, what are they doing there? That's a technique known as lamp shading. Doing something that arguably doesn't make the least bit of sense, but if you reference it, it's somehow okay. It's like, yeah, I know they shouldn't have been there, but let's just go with it. That's annoying. There are times where it can work. Here, it was really annoying. And to me, the whole bit with Jessica, because I'm pretty sure she's bulletproof. I know she can take a bullet, whether it's she's not like Luke Cage where it would just, bounce off or something. But, I don't know, the whole thing.
Which do you hate more? Lampshading or the media res where they drop you in some action and then flashback to before that to lead up to it again?
That's a tough call.
There are so many. We could have an all cliche episode at some point, and writer's crutches and cliches, and just kind of rank order the ones that we see way too much and hate.
Yeah. I would argue the Man, I was gonna argue the start in the middle and then flash back to what led up to it, because to me that's hiding a weak story that if you just told it in chronological order wouldn't be as exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the lamp shading is just kind of an off the cuff reference. Both are, I mean, to me that's not even as much work as the other. But both imply that if the writer had just given it a little bit more thought, they could have made a decision that made sense in the story and gave them the drama they wanted out of it.
Yeah. And you know what? We see the inventiveness and strength of writers over in the Commandy Challenge. I'm assuming you're still reading that, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm behind, but yes.
Some of the writers that get these scripts, and Commandy is in such a ridiculously tough situation, and write incredibly well thought out, plausible ways for him to get out of it, and then leave him in another really harrowing situation that looks like he can't get out of. And then some writers don't really play fair to get out of it, and then leave him in something that's not very inventive. So you can really see with that Commandy Challenge who your strong writers are in the stable. And if nothing else, if I was over at DC and reading that, I would be evaluating talent based on how seriously they took this challenge and actually stepped up. And you can see that when people do these techniques like lamp shading and stuff as a crutch, and they go back to the well so often, maybe they need to think that, not that Brian Michael Bendis is a hack by any means, but it does show that he's taken shortcuts when maybe he didn't.
It makes me think there's some kind of like a writer test you could give them of, here's the situation, how do you fix it?
Yeah.
Not exactly like the Commandy Challenge. It's like, well, you could do something where you've got a story that lacks a dramatic opening and stuff. How do you fix it? Oh, well, I put the dramatic ending at the beginning and then just lead back up to it. Wrong answer.
Yeah.
Why is the beginning weak? Let's make that better, There's got to be better answers for some of this versus just leaning on the crutch. And you're right, we've got some writers out there that are incredibly inventive, have some cool ideas, are able to execute well, even on bland ideas. And when you get a combination of cool idea and really good execution, that's awesome. But then you've also got some that it's like, not worth the time to go figure out a better way for Jessica to have encountered this family and to instead of just she walks right out of the tribunal and boom, they're there in the hallway, versus she walks out of the building, maybe? I mean, it wouldn't have been that hard to do something that almost made sense. To me, that comes down to, and I'm not saying Bendis is a lazy writer, but it comes down to lazy writing, in my opinion. Bendis is certainly prolific. He's had some really great stuff. And I'm not saying every moment of every story deserves the utmost, thoroughness in the writing. There are going to be times where, it's like, okay, it's not that important. Let's just do this and move on.
Yeah.
But if you do that and somebody like me reviews it and says you didn't give it enough thought, I think that's a fair thing to say too.
And I've never seen a Bendis script. So I'm wondering, is the Marvel method still a thing? Are they just kind of loose outlines? And, I need this character to meet these people, artist, take a shot at it. Show, and then is it that kind of collaboration? Or is it full script, Scott Snyder type stuff, where everything to the nth degree is detailed by the writer to where there's nothing for the artist to do but carry out the detailed directions? I don't know. I don't think I've seen a Bendis script before. So it's possible that there's some Marvel method going on, and he's trusting his artist, and when he gets the result back, he's like, I can make this work with a little bit of dialogue.
And that's fair. It may be that I'm blaming the wrong person. Either way, the story was what the story was.
Exactly.
And I guess I favor more the television film model of, here is the script. You can change it when you shoot it, but here's the script.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To me, the Marvel method would be the equivalent of, here's the treatment, go film, and I need an hour-long episode out of this. It's just, I suppose it could work, but I don't know.
Oh, I think it worked for a long time. Here's 15 beats that we need to get in this story. Please connect those dots.
I think it was done for a long time. As for whether it worked or not, there have been so many horror stories that writers, oh, look what this artist did, and vice versa. The artist's like, well, I did this, and they went that way. So there are times where clearly the writer and the artist are not on the same page, both figuratively and literally in some cases. Again, there were aspects of this that I liked. It's not a bad story. It's just, it feels much more Maria Hill-centric than Jessica Jones-centric. And if it was just, hey, that's the case, she's on this issue or whatever, but it feels like this has been going on a lot. Mm-hmm. For me, I'm going to go with a C-. They need to pick up their game on this.
Yeah, I've been enjoying this series a lot, so I'm probably giving it a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to give this issue a B-. I did not like the diversion into the different art style and the Maria Hill story, but the other stuff I really enjoyed, and I enjoy this character, and I find her really, really interesting, and want to read more about her. So for that, it's a win, but yeah, not the best in the run so far. So B- for me.
I get why they had the other artist for the flashback to really set it apart, but the art style, to your point, was very jarring. So yeah, Shall we move on to our other book?
Yeah.
This is Elsewhere #1. It is an Image comic. It is by Jay Faerber, and we've got
Sumai Kesgan?
Sumai Kesgan. We'll go with that.
Okay.
That is now the artist's name. Hopefully, we didn't butcher her name.
Or his name?
Her.
Okay.
Pretty sure Jay Faerber mentions it's a her at the letters page. Or I've butchered the gender too, and that's just cruel. This is Jay Faerber. He's done Copperhead. He's done Noble Causes. He's done Dynamo 5. He's done some stuff over at certainly at DC. I think he did Titans for a little bit, maybe. I forget what all. He's done a ton. And it's stuff that I really like, but doesn't always kind of really click with people, or the market, I should say. I think it clicks with a lot of people.
You're still reading Copperhead, correct?
I'm still reading Copperhead.
Yep, me too.
I have not read all of his stuff. He did like Near Death and one or two others. There's one that was a like police procedural or whatever. I think we reviewed it a few years back, and it might have been Near Death. It just didn't work for me. But most of his stuff I've really enjoyed. The more super heroic or whatever it is, the better for me. This is pure fantasy for the most part. I thought this was a really fun issue. We start with a blank slate. We get to know the lead characters here, the Korvath natives of Court and Tavel or whatever, who are, they look alien, but not inhumanly alien for the sake of looking inhumanly alien. It's like they're clearly not from Earth. Okay, got it. And then they meet up with an Earthling. In this case, it's Amelia Earhart. And in the course of this issue, we get to know this version of Amelia. And what I love is, for these three characters, their personalities become really clear from what we see them do, how they interact with each other, and there are arguably some broad brushstrokes and stuff, but it's clear that they are different, particularly Court and Tavel. They're very different people, even if you can't tell them apart at a glance, the minute one of them opens his mouth, it's, I know which one that is. And again, they're alien without being inaccessibly alien. And this is another one where we got a little bit of lamp shading when at one point they mention that she's speaking English and they're not, to the point where they can understand what she's saying, but at one point they hear a word that they hadn't heard before, plane, and, they address the fact that there's the language barrier, but they could still recognize an unfamiliar word.
Thank God it's not like barrier. They just keep the alien language in place throughout this and just let you suss it out that way. Thank goodness they chose to go this route.
Yeah, and they didn't even bother with putting the brackets or whatever. Oh, this is translated. It's just, no, they can understand each other, and they realize they can understand each other. But there's a couple of words here and there that pop, so they address it, dismiss it as unimportant to the story, and I'm like, okay, it doesn't matter to the story. I'm fine with that. It didn't feel like it was a big deal. They used it well, and such that if two Earthlings were to make use of did you ever see the Star Trek Next Generation episode where Picard is down on a planet with an alien, and he's like, Darmok at Tanagra, and the universal translator is no help, because the guy is basically giving names and locations. And it turns out that society has gone essentially trying to think of the right way to phrase it. They're telling everything in stories and anecdotes. They're a completely referential language.
Ah.
Okay? So it would be like, gosh, I'm trying to think of a good example. Something that everybody would recognize the name and the place and make the association. If the Earthlings were to do that, they could get away with it the way they've kind of played with the rules here of the language. Okay, got it. If somebody's going to do a Benedict Arnold, these people would have no clue what you're talking about. Oh, let's betray somebody. Got it. So there's aspects of the world that are introduced. There are aspects that are kind of explained. There's certainly a lot more to learn here and understand here, but I felt engaged in the world and curious where they're going to go with this, but I enjoyed it a lot. It was a lot of fun, and it ended on a reveal at the end that I didn't see coming, but the minute I saw it, it's like, oh, that was clever. That makes sense. That works. Given what you have set up, I didn't see it coming, but maybe I should have.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a great reveal.
Yeah, it drives the rest of the story, and until they want to go in a different direction, and yeah, they fit together well. And I had read the preview pages already in the back of a couple of Image books, so I already knew Amelia was going to be there. But then the additional character, I did not, and it was fun. It was a fun reveal, and it really makes this an exciting comic that I want to read. I thought the art was cool, and I too like the aliens. They work really well together. I liked her growth in front of their eyes throughout this story. She's quite capable. She's not a damsel that needs protecting. And let me show you, I can fly these things better than you can, and it's amazing how well I can do it. And then they kind of grow to appreciate her, while assuming that they're going to be strapped with her and she's going to be an anchor that gets them caught. She's actually quite a good teammate, and I thought that was really done well.
Yeah, and it was all shown. We didn't have to get told all of this.
Yeah. It was a really fun introduction, and then we've got to figure out exactly what we're doing, and I guess we're just it's kind of a jailbreak story, this first arc maybe. And I'm curious what the next step is, and where this goes, and what kind of fun hijinks we get into, and for how long. And for how long these characters stay relevant. Who's the star of this? Is it Amelia? Is it the two aliens? Are they in it for the long haul? I don't know. But so far so good. And I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, if I had to figure that out, I would go with Amelia and Court are the two leads. Tavel may stick around, may not. I don't think he's essential. But we'll find out. What I liked is they set a clear sensibility, tone, and style, and a direction for an arc. And maybe they're gonna take down the evil empire, whatever sort of a thing. But there's a lot of different directions they can go in. It's not like it's a, here's the evil empire we have to take down, and that's all we're ever going to talk about, and that's it. They could do some other smaller, quieter stories on the side if they want to. They've got some wiggle room, and I like that.
Now, did Amelia Earhart have a co-pilot with her? Or was it a solo flight when she disappeared?
I thought it was a solo flight, but I'm basing that on her appearances on such things as Gilligan's Island and the like.
Right, exactly.
So perhaps not historically accurate.
And you can take creative license, with some of these things. It's I don't think it's a historical record, and it's a loose. He can have a loose interpretation of some of the facts, and I think that's okay.
Well, this Fred Noonan, the Navigator, probably is legit. I just I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Don't really care.
Maybe. It was Fred. For some reason I thought it was Dave.
Fred Noonan, the Navigator, is what she mentions at the beginning.
Yeah. I think we're gonna see him again.
Yeah, at some point. If I had to guess, my inclination, were I writing this, and clearly I am not, Jay Faber's fully capable of doing it on his own, of course, I would have this dude show up in the service of the evil Empire guy.
Having flipped.
not necessarily having flipped. Maybe he's just doing it because it's an easy route, or he was threatened, or for whatever reason. I don't think he's necessarily going to have bought in with the Empire, but it's like either this or go get thrown in prison or whatever.
Yeah, that's kind of that's a good twist.
Feels
like that.
Feels like Fred would be the type to play ball.
Yeah.
But again, I'm basing this on not even on a name. I'm basing this on the fact, what would I use this character for? What would be the most inconvenient thing for Amelia, who presumably is setting out to rescue this dude? When she finds him, what would be the most awkward thing? He's like, no, I'm good. To me, that would play interestingly. Because then you've got the big rescue, and they're like, oh, you don't need rescuing. Well, I'm glad we went through all this trouble.
Now what do I do?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So again, I'm enjoying this. I like it when they've got a reveal at an end of an issue that just hits that right note. And there's so many different directions they can go with that, but it's not one of those where it's, here's the big reveal, and I'm like, and what should I have gotten out of that? It's like, I don't get it or whatever. I mean, some people will have that if they don't recognize the name or whatever, or the note they're trying to hit there. But I'm looking forward to more of this. I think Faerber has a really good product and property here, and I want to see it move forward.
Yeah,
should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. I'm still loving Copperhead. I think it's a great book, and I'm glad to see it. It came back from its hiatus. So really good 1-2 punch so far on this. I'm going to give this a straight A, and I really liked it, and I'm looking forward to more.
That's exactly where I'm at. Definite A. Not quite to the A+, but not missing it by much. And I'd be a little hard-pressed to name exactly kind of why I don't feel it's there. It's really close. It's a lot of fun. I really recommend this. And I'm, again, looking forward to where he goes with this.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really good. My last A+ was Time and Vine. It's not as good as Time and Vine. But it's not far away. It's a really good first issue.
I think that's part of it, is we've had a couple of things that are such clear out of the park A pluses. Time and Vine, for me, the Red Team Double Tap Center Mass, a few other things here and there that just really, really completely work. And this wasn't there, but it's in the running. You know what I mean? It's just that one minor notch below that or whatever. And it's nice to have Elsewhere have a nice, strong female lead, but also one that's very different than the female lead over in Copperhead. So I think Jay Faerber is not, I'm surprised he's not a bigger name than he is. He's done a lot of really good work over a fairly lengthy period. He's deserving of more recognition.
And you said he's done Big 2 work.
Pretty sure. I'd have to go look up exactly what, but I thought he did stuff over at DC. I'm thinking he did Titans for a bit, and I thought he did something over at Marvel, but I could be wrong on that.
Because, I mean, there are folks, creators that really crackle on their own invention, their own creation. They're a notch above where they are when they're on an assignment, and it's just not, and it's in a pre-existing world where there's rules that they can't really break, and they have editorial oversight that kind of keeps them logged in. You see a lot of that sort of thing where this fantastic creator who created this amazing property out of nothing somewhere, and then they go, which is their dream and their right to go. They want to work for the Marvel and DC, and when they get there, their stuff just lays there. It's not exciting, and it's just must just be a different environment, different way to work. The pieces just don't fit as well. You see that sometimes.
I didn't see that as much with Faerber as some others, certainly, but I think part of the difference is having an editor that you are reporting to at the Big 2 being a little bit, I don't want to say problematic, but it can not benefit things.
I'm thinking specifically of Tim Seeley and the amazing work that he did on Revival.
Fair enough.
And then, we're seeing this stuff. What we're seeing, okay, but not fantastic work on Nightwing, and I think he did the Lost Boys as well. That didn't quite connect with anyone. And so he's not alone. There are a lot of characters, or a lot of creators that are like this, where they they do a different type of work, and sometimes it doesn't translate to big two properties.
Two things I want to point out on Elsewhere.
Yeah.
Faerber did What If for an issue back in 1998 and was the regular writer for a little bit on Generation X.
Oh, okay.
And the person who hired him for that was Frank Pittarisi. I may have butchered that name. And what's interesting, and this is in the letters page at the end, Faerber hired Frank as the editor on this book.
Very cool.
He's got a lot on his plate because Faerber's working on the Zoo series at CBS and has some other stuff going on, like Copperhead and whatnot. So having somebody who's helping kind of, keep the trains running on time and stuff, and not just scheduling and proofing, but also giving some story feedback. I really respect a writer who's like, hey, if I can get another set of eyes on this or whatever, so much the better. To me, that's awesome, and that's, again, a different dynamic than an editor who hires you, so it's pretty good. The other thing I want to point out about Elsewhere is it's going to be 4-issue arcs, a month off, a solicit for the trade, another month off, and then they get back to it.
Yeah.
And
that's
just
it's the industry standard now, but I hate it.
That's not the industry standard, but it's not unheard of either. I think really there's a handful of titles doing it. I think the standard is more twice a month.
It's the image standard.
Fair enough. But if that's what it takes to keep it on time, I'm all for it. And I like him saying at the get-go, this is the game plan. Versus we get 4 issues and then nothing, and then we get a trade and then nothing, and we think, oh, it's over, and then it's back. So being upfront about it is appreciated.
But that next issue will be 5 and not number 1 of a new relaunch.
He didn't specify, actually. Don't know. Could go either way.
Interesting.
So as I mentioned, I am still behind on my reading.
Keeping it below 500?
Oh yeah, that's the goal. We'll see how well I do. I managed to get some stuff read. What should I read? I think 9 comics for this episode. The 3 we read, and then the other stuff to catch up on those titles. But then I read another 31, so I'm down to, I think, 432 is what I'm thinking. Let me double check that in my... Yeah, 432 is what I'm thinking.
Would you say this is the most woefully behind you've ever been?
It's up there with one other time. There was one time I was doing a lot of traveling. It was around the time of 0 Hour, and I was crazy behind too. Probably about this far behind, maybe not this far behind, but I honestly don't remember. It's.
And what allowed you to catch up that time?
Having time to do a lot of reading. I mean, it sounds so obvious. I'll be honest. Part of what's the problem right now is I've just got some stuff going on. There's the whole podcast, the number crunching, and a few other things.
You weren't doing 3 episodes a week back then.
I wasn't doing a podcast. 0 Hour was 20 years ago?
Okay. So the occasional forum post was really your only comic responsibilities back then. If that.
I was going to say, did I not mention this was 20 years ago?
Yeah, well, I think in 97, you could have been on a forum.
I know it was on during 0 Hour. I don't remember when 0 Hour was, to be honest. It might have been more than 20 years ago. It was a long time ago.
Gotcha.
I was younger. The eyesight was better. I could probably read a little faster. And comics weren't coming out every few minutes. I think just while we recorded this, they released another 12 issues of at least 4 of these titles. So there's that. But yeah, part of it is just I need to find some more time to sit and read, but I've got a few things that are clamoring for my attention.
We got some exciting news in mergers and acquisitions this week. Netflix has purchased Millar World, and that's Mark Millar's imprint, home to such things as Huck, Jupiter's Legacy, and Chrononauts, to name a few recent successes. Reborn is another
Kingsman?
one. Yeah, they don't get that.
They don't?
They don't get Kingsman. They don't get or Hit Girl.
So any of the stuff that had been...
Not optioned, I guess.
Not optioned. I thought they bought him out lock, stock, and barrel. So while they may not be able to do shows on it, I had thought they got the properties, but I don't know that for certain.
According to his blog post, those are pre-existing contracts and don't go with the deal. But if we get either Netflix series or movies on just 3 or 4 of those, those will be a lot of fun. I would be really excited to see Chrononauts on the screen. We talked about it, I think, when we reviewed it, how much fun that would be as a TV series. And
TV series or movie?
Either. I could see it. I could see it either way.
I think a lot of his stuff, that one is a bit more TV applicable, but I think a lot of his stuff feels more like movies. Now, it could be a series of movies.
I think Huck could be a nice movie, but I think Jupiter's Legacy is definitely a series.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I would say Brilliant would be an interesting movie.
Reborn, I think you could go either way. I think it would be a great movie that kind of stuck to the 6-issue miniseries, but then there are plenty of adventures to tell, and you could tell that story a long time if you wanted to.
Well, it's interesting how Netflix is really proactive about not only just licensing stuff, but in this case, acquiring properties. And there's a lot of new material that's being made explicitly for Netflix. Third season of Young Justice is going to come out at some point on Netflix. Second season of Miraculous is coming out on Netflix. They've obviously got all the Marvel, Defender stuff. So acquiring Millar World and having an in-house incubation process makes a lot of sense.
Rick, you see, Rick Remender has done this. Its own imprint as well, like a Skybound, like a Matt Hawkins imprint. There are a lot of these creators that have a lot of work are kind of pulling them under this umbrella, and I'm wondering if that's the reason that they have the big thing to dangle in front of the big media conglomerate and sell it. Probably not Skybound, but maybe.
Well, I think Millar had always been building a library of IP for... A lot of his stuff was basically, let me show you what the movie could be.
Yeah.
Wanted being the earliest thing that turned into a movie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So it's one of those things that a lot of his properties, while fun, are short. And there's nothing right or wrong about it. And he was telling really good comics versus somebody who was doing something for the sole purpose of, let me turn this into a TV show or something. And not telling a great comic in the process, but telling an okay comic.
Which we reviewed some of those. Yes,
we have. There have been many of them over the years. And again, nothing right or wrong about it. If somebody's got a story and they can get it out in one format versus another, that's great. More power to them. If this means more original content for Netflix and stuff, that's great too. But it comes down to at what point does the bubble kind of burst? And we're at a high watermark in terms of the number of comic book based properties that are being turned into movies, TV shows, video games, etc. And at some point, that may stop.
Yeah. I don't know. I thought it would have happened by now. I thought I had my money on Ant-Man being the big flop, and it wasn't. And Wonder Woman did fantastic, and people are really excited about Defenders, and so.
But when do we go from there being 5 CW DC Universe shows back to there being like none?
Yeah.
And no other network picking up the slack.
Yeah.
Because we're going to have this coming season Arrow, Flash, Supergirl, Legends of Tomorrow, Black Lightning. Elsewhere, we're going to have, I think, Krypton. We've got iZombie, Lucifer, Preacher, and that's just DC. You toss in Inhumans and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Walking Dead. We're now at, 13 or something TV shows. And that's just kind of off the cuff. Gifted, that's 14. So now we're at for 7 days a week, 2 per night, kind of a thing. You could, if they were all on the same network, you could go 7 days a week for 2 hours of prime time, and granted you do reruns periodically, but you get the idea. I mean, it's crazy.
We will have a comic channel at some point. We will have a comic book channel that will buy the syndication rights to all these shows and run them constantly. It'll be fantastic, and I'll love it.
I don't think we need it. We've got Netflix.
Well, that's true. We don't, do we?
The landscape is changing, and I think Netflix positioned themselves well. And with this acquisition, with the properties they've got, the rerun or licensing agreement to get the CW shows shortly after they air on Netflix, they're doing some really smart moves. So we'll see how that all goes. It's going to be interesting to see if we get a little bit of a dry spell in terms of comics for Mark Millar. and if and when he comes back, what he comes back with, and how. I mean, obviously, I would expect them to be very directly applicable to a Netflix kind of a venue.
Right. Will the preview spotlight be out by the time this drops?
We're recording this on August 8th, and the preview spotlight goes up on the 9th.
Okay.
So, yes.
How was the turnout?
It was good. It was good. I'll be honest, I was a little panicked at first because when I had my spreadsheet say, well, how many clips do I have? I hadn't actually unzipped a few things from the emails I'd gotten, a few things, and I'm like, I only have so many. I actually had about twice that. We had, 50-ish,
oh,
give or
good.
take.
Good.
Depends if you count mine or not. So it was an hour and a half-ish episode, I think. We've had bigger, we've had smaller.
Yeah. I was wondering, it might have been the summer vacation schedules are getting to everybody, but hopefully everybody's back home and getting ready to go back to school and all that good stuff. So redoubled our efforts, and maybe we can get a nice big August episode in, or September episode, I'm sorry.
September at that point, yeah. Well, and again, it comes down to what's in the previews each time. Sometimes it calls out to more people than others.
True.
You know, particularly as we're getting to where there's 6-issue arcs, there's sometimes where there's a lot of in the middle of an arc versus, hey, this is a new story, it's a good jumping on point. But I think certainly from some of the things getting posted on the forum and on the Slack channel, there's a couple of new titles coming out that I'm expecting to get clips on. The Terrifics is one of them. I'm expecting. I'm sure we'll get some clips on. That looks like a lot of fun from DC.
Okay.
So the next, let's see. The teleconference is going to be. Let's see. This goes up on the 14th. Yeah, on the Saturday, the 19th of August, 7 p.m. This is, of course, 2017 for the time travelers and the people listening to this later. We're going to do our teleconference. We skipped July because I was off goofing off at Comic-Con. If there's comics you want me to be able to discuss on that August 19th, let me know sooner rather than later so I maybe have a little time to, read them. And then the preview spotlight deadline for September will be September 9th. That's bright and early in the morning, that Saturday morning, or at least as early as I get up. If you need a little extra time, let me know. People have gotten really good about sending in the clips earlier, and I really appreciate it because that means I can kind of get organized and get through the stuff pretty quickly, and I'm getting into a better rhythm towards taking a little less time, and that's always helpful. But then other episodes we've got coming up soon. Obviously, we just talked about the August preview spotlight will have gone up by now, as will the collector's box light for June and July. We're getting into about a 2-month cadence there, roughly. Then we've got the Mayo reports for June. I've recorded with Sam, had a technical glitch, so TJ and I have rescheduled, but I'm still going to get that up. And then, of course, by that point, the July stuff will be out. So I'll be scheduling again, so those will come up in short order. And then we're going to do a 10th anniversary episode that'll get released on August 23rd. We're actually going to record that on the 16th. So if you've got any questions you've always wanted answered about the history or whatnot of the Comic Book Page podcast, let us know. Who knows? Maybe I'll answer them. Gonna have as many of the co-hosts on as I can. Not sure if we're gonna get TJ on the main recording. If not, I may circle back with him later and do kind of an and another thing sort of segment, just because I want to have him included too. But should be a lot of fun. Anything else? Does that pretty much do it?
That'll do it.
Cool.